Paths, Lesson 22, Making Good Choices with Miss Love. Objectives. I can learn to distinguish between a healthy group and an unhealthy group. I can use problem solving to make good choices. I can recognize that I am in control of the decisions I make. Schedule for this lesson, we're not going to have a journal, so we're going to firstly have story time and then we'll end with an exit ticket. The story we are going to read today is about groups. So I thought it was important to talk about groups and why do they matter. So why do groups matter? Firstly, all social animals belong to groups. All of them. Lions, tigers, wolves, all of them run in packs. Lions live together in pride, so they all have all of these systems that they exist in as a group. And the reality of that is humans are social animals too. So we belong to groups prior to us calling them groups or whatever you would call them, your friend group, your squad, whatever it may be. We were in tribes. So we all belong to a collective. And this is important because groups make you feel like you belong, right? And contrary to what some people think, loners and all those people, are not discrediting any of that, but the reality is that belonging is an innate desire of human beings, meaning that we are born with the desire, with the want to belong to something. And the easiest thing to belong to is a group of people, right? You're born into a family, which is a group of people. So we're born with that desire to want to belong to a group. Groups also help you feel protected, right? In a group, you always have somebody that you can call on. And that doesn't mean for any physical altercations or anything. If you're just feeling low, right? You can call somebody and they can be there for you because they are part of your social group. They're aware of who you are and of how you feel about certain things. And lastly, groups offer you strength. There is power in numbers. So the idea that you have other people around you, it makes you strong in areas that alone you might be weak in, right? Because you have these other people that have all these other qualities that are now around you, right? And it'll allow you to build up the things that you might lack in because you have these people there that can show you the way. So I just wanted to give you those few pointers on why groups are so important and why you might feel the desire to belong to one. Everybody has that feeling. It is a part of our makeup. It's a part of our very being that we have from the moment we're born. So you're not alone in that. So we're going to get into the story, and it's about groups, right? And healthy groups and unhealthy groups and how to deal with that when it presents itself. And we'll talk about that afterwards. The choice from the Paths curriculum. Jerome was a fifth grader who lived with his mother and grandparents in a large set of apartment buildings. Many other kids lived nearby, but Jerome was especially good friends with a group of boys who called themselves the Swags because they walked around school with a tough swagger. They got together every afternoon to hang out after school. Knowing that he belonged to this group was very important to Jerome. One very hot day after school, Toby, one of the older boys in the group, who often bullied others, began to taunt Jerome. Taunting is a type of teasing that usually involves put-downs. Hey Jerome, you're just weak, sneered Toby. Naturally, Jerome felt upset and confused because he hadn't done anything to Toby. Toby just seemed to want to pick on somebody. No, I'm not, replied Jerome. Yeah, well, prove it then. We don't let wimps stay in the swags. Toby was being malicious and mean. Jerome didn't know what to say. The other boys were listening, but no one else wanted to speak up. They didn't want Toby to accuse them of being wimps too. Like Jerome, they felt stunned because no one had ever threatened to kick anyone out of the group before. Toby acted like he was speaking for all of them. I'll tell you what, continued Toby. We'll let you stay if you prove you're not a wimp. You can prove it by stealing a pack of cigarettes and a six-pack of beer. Then you will truly be one of the swags. If you don't do it, then I'm sure I can find someone else who will. Jerome knew that stealing was wrong and that smoking and drinking were wrong too. He didn't want to disappoint his mom and grandparents. They taught him the difference between right and wrong. And he knew he would get into all kinds of trouble with his mom and with the police if he were to get caught. He worried that he would be arrested, go to court, and have to pay fines. It was too much to think about. He felt guilty and anxious. Jerome felt his heart race, his face was hot, and his breathing was hard. He did not know what to do. Jerome felt that being a member of the Swags was really important to him. He also didn't want the other boys to think that he was weak. But even thinking about stealing cigarettes and beer made him feel guilty and anxious inside. Jerome felt like he was being forced to make a difficult choice. "So what's it going to be?" continued Toby. "You going to prove you're not a wimp? Or are you going to prove to us that you are? Remember, if you don't do it, I'm sure someone else will." Everyone was staring at Jerome. At first, Jerome did think about selling the cigarettes and beer, but then he thought about how his mom and grandparents would feel. He knew they would feel very disappointed and hurt if he did something so wrong. Then Jerome thought about not being a part of the group anymore. That made him feel depressed. The whole thing felt confusing, but the more Jerome thought about it, the more he felt angry. "Toby should not ask me to do these things. He is bullying me," thought Jerome. He heard his grandmother's voice talking inside of his head. "It's wrong to steal, to smoke, or to drink, and it doesn't make you strong or brave. Only weak people steal and hurt themselves on purpose." Remembering her words, he calmed down and used his thinking skills. This helped Jerome create another choice, a better choice. Thinking gave him the power to stand up for himself and to fight back. He didn't use fists or physical weapons. He used logic, or smart thinking, and words. Jerome took a long, deep breath before he answered Toby. He said, "First of all, I'm not a wimp. But even if I were, it wouldn't prove anything for me to steal cigarettes and beer. Only wimps and kids who bully try to make someone do something wrong like stealing. You're bullying me, Toby, and you should feel guilty for what you're doing." "Guilty? Why should I feel guilty?" replied Toby, surprised. He hadn't expected Jerome to fight back with logic. "You should feel guilty because you're being mean. You're being mean to me and you're trying to make me do something that you know is wrong. Only weak people go around forcing others to do stupid things like steal. That's bullying, and it makes you the wimp, not me." The other boys were looking at Jerome with shocked expressions. Toby was a lot bigger than Jerome was, and no one ever talked back to Toby. But Toby didn't reply. He didn't have a comeback. He was used to bullying the other kids and having power. For the first time, Toby didn't know what to say. But Toby wanted to save face, meaning he didn't want to feel embarrassed in front of everyone. So he responded, "Yeah, well, I don't feel guilty about anything. Guilt is for wimps. In fact, you're all wimps, and I don't want to hang out with wimps. You can have Jerome. I'm out of here." Then Toby quickly walked away without looking back. "Wow," said little Bucky. No one ever talked like that to Toby before. Jerome could tell that the other boys were impressed, and he was beginning to feel proud of himself as well. His heart slowed down to normal, his face grew cooler, and it was easier to breathe. He had stood up to Toby and he had won. Yeah, well, I felt mad when he told me he wanted me to steal cigarettes and beer. That would be wrong. I would feel guilty doing something like that. That night, Jerome kept thinking about what had happened. He realized that feeling guilty about doing bad things made him more powerful than Toby. Toby didn't seem to feel guilty about being mean or hurting others. That made Toby seem strong, but now Jerome realized that it really made Toby weak. Jerome had never seen this before, but now it seemed perfectly clear. People who bully are not strong. In fact, sometimes they're weak. When his grandmother came in to tell him good night, Jerome gave her a huge smile and said, "Thanks, Grandma, for teaching me to do the right thing. Thanks for helping me learn to be strong." His grandmother looked surprised and pleased. Well, Jerome, you're welcome, and thank you for appreciating it. My, you are really growing up. And that was certainly the truth. Jerome was growing up and doing it in a very good way. It made him feel proud, strong, and secure to know that he had made an honorable choice. This experience would help him with other choices that he would have to make in the years ahead. And that was it. That was the story. Now I want you to think back to our objectives, right? I want you to think back about the objective about knowing how to choose between a healthy and unhealthy group, knowing how to problem solve, knowing that you're in control of your own decisions. Jerome faced all of those things, and I think he did an amazing job with dealing with them. He realized that maybe the group that was forming with Toby involved wasn't the most healthy. He also realized that he had to make a decision for himself because he could have gotten into a lot of trouble if he went along with what Toby wanted, but he used his problem solving skills to figure out how to work that out. So before we get to our exit ticket, I kind of wanted to just go over some kind of ground rules, I guess, for what positive groups are versus what negative groups are. So in a positive group, they make you feel respected, right? Toby didn't make Jerome feel respected. He didn't at all. And that was being a part of just an unhealthy group. They allow you to feel free to make your own choices. Also, something Toby was not doing for Jerome. They help you make good choices. Another thing Toby was not doing for Jerome within their group. They're there for you. And they allow you to feel free to be you, to be who you are without any judgment. I think those are really good qualities for a healthy or positive group. And then for an unhealthy or a negative group, they only show you respect when you're doing something for them, right? Jerome wasn't doing anything for Toby, so he didn't feel like he needed to respect him. They put pressure on you to do what they want you to do. And they don't necessarily push you to make good choices. They actually can sometimes kind of push you to make not so great bad choices. And they make you feel like you have to change yourself to fit into this group. So in moving forward and thinking about the groups that you're a part of, think about these things. Think about if it's a positive or healthy group, and think about if it's not so positive, if it's unhealthy, if it's negative. You need to really take these things into account, because oftentimes who you're around will cause people to view you in a certain way. It's very important to choose your friends and the groups that you're around very wisely, because they shape the way other people can view you sometimes. So our exit ticket for this lesson: have you ever been a part of a group that didn't make you feel free to be who you wanted to be? So have you ever been a part of a friend group or any type of social group that made you feel uncomfortable to just be who you were? You can put your responses in the exit ticket assignment with the same name as this lesson, and I look forward to your responses.